Hello everyone, welcome back to the Analyst for 17 December 2024, where we will be understanding 7 most important articles from the Hindu and the Indian Express. In our discussion today, we'll be dividing the discussion into 2 parts. In the first section, we'll be starting with analysis of 2 articles, wherein in the first article, we'll be looking into the significance of the visit of the recent Sri Lankan president to India and the broader India and Sri Lankan ties. In the second article of the analysis section, we'll be understanding the broader implications of adopting green hydrogen in India and the various financial issues regarding the same. In the next part of our discussion, we'll be discussing 5 more important articles in the simplified portion, which are highly crucial and important for the upcoming Prelims 2025 examination. So stay tuned. The new Sri Lankan President Anura Kumara Dissanayake has visited India, and it is speculated to be one of the most important highlights in the recent India and Sri Lankan relations. And in this article, we will be trying to understand the main significance of this visit, what are the various outcomes. Along with the same, we will be also briefly discussing the various background of India and Sri Lankan ties. Now, it is a very important article when we talk about the current events of national and international importance. I'll be telling why, because at the end I'll be showing you 2 PYQs from prelims, that why we have to understand some of the important IR articles or international relation articles which are important for mains for our prelims too. So this is how we should be understanding the various important dynamics in the IR part. Also, it is important for the GS2 portion, where we have to talk about India and its neighborhood relations, where there have been 2 mains PYQs in this particular topic. Now, to start with, the India and Sri Lankan relations have started not right now or say a few hundred years ago when the British came, but it started many thousands of years ago, right? It started with the Buddhist diplomacy which was practiced by King Ashoka when he sent his son Mahinda and his daughter Sangamitra to Sri Lanka to spread Buddhism. And you know, the king of Sri Lanka back then was actually initiated into Buddhism, and then the roots of Buddhism was planted for the very first time in Sri Lanka, and over a period of time Sri Lanka got more and more closer to the Indian kingdoms and the various other cultural aspects and various other people to people contacts with our country. Now this is an ancient touch we have with Sri Lanka. Also we have a medieval touch when the Chola dynasty conquered the Sri Lankan island, and it also set up many architectures, many monuments and many pieces of administration and various other aspects in Sri Lanka. And also it is very interesting to know that Rajendra Chola built a Shiva temple in Sri Lanka in the name of his mother, as we can see here, right? So we understand that ties go back way ahead. And when we talk about, say, the colonial times, the British and the various other colonial powers in the very starting times, right, they started colonizing India, and also along with the same aspect, the British tried to establish its colonial powers and its markets and its institutions in Sri Lanka. And also when we understand that India got its independence in 1947, Sri Lanka got the same from British in 1948. And after independence, Sri Lankan government or the administration in general, or the political scene in general, was marked by a lot of strifes and military conflicts and various internal issues. Mainly there was an say broad overall feeling that the Tamilian community in Sri Lanka and the Buddhist community in Sri Lanka, they were always at clashes with each other, and that was at its peak during 1980s to around 2009, when the liberation tigers of Tamil Elam conflict actually was taking place during that time, which is one of the worst say cases of internal struggle, which was waged in the Sri Lankan say country. And this struggle also impacted India in a very negative way, which led to the assassination of our then Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi. And also in this regard, I want to suggest you one very important and say very interesting movie rather, that is Madras Cafe, which is talking about this various intelligence operations during this conflict. So it is a must watch, and those of you who have watched, you let me know in the comments how you enjoyed it, right? And also this is the way in which we should be trying to link our general studies with the various important and socially relevant movies and various art pieces happening around us. And finally, when we talk about the contemporary times, Sri Lankan have seen many regime changes, and also Sri Lankan have faced various issues of economic crisis, political corruption, due to which the various political parties, the various family dynastics, the family politics in the country there have led to the overall economic decline over a period of time, particularly after the LTE conflict there. And Sri Lankan government recently also faced a major balance of payment crisis just after COVID-19, during which their entire tourism sector and also the various export sectors have crashed during those time, due to which they faced a major BOP crisis, and during which India was actually one of the very first countries to assist Sri Lanka in this particular regard, right? And also we have to understand India always tried to assist Sri Lanka in various other crises too, be it supply of vaccines or be it the setting up of the 1987 India-Sri Lankan agreement to curb the LTT violence, to help send Indian peacekeeping forces to Sri Lanka. India has always shown the way of friendship and acting or assisting as a big brother, right? And also when we talk about the strategic importance due to which India attaches so much significance to Sri Lanka, we have to understand the geography of the region, right? We understand that we have the various exclusive economic zones, but where we have the Indo-Sri Lankan maritime boundary, which have been arrived at using various agreements between the two countries. But mainly we understand it is actually the Park Strait through which we have the most important shipping lane in this region, right? A lot of major ships cross this region, and that is why it is highly imperative that India maintains a good contact, a good relation with Sri Lanka. And here we have to understand the geography is that this is a very minor strait, and also we have the presence of China in this region, particularly in the Hambantota port in this region, because due to various debt trap policy of China, which China gave to Sri Lanka, the debt which Sri Lanka could not pay back, it paid, Sri Lanka paid back through the Hambantota port, right? And the Hambantota port right now is actually under, the overall or partial control of China, due to which India is also worried as to what would be the overall status quo, in the next few, years in the Park Strait region. Next, when we talk about the Indian Ocean region, we cannot ignore Sri Lanka in this aspect, due to which Indian government has actually a string of policies for the country of Sri Lanka and also the overall IOR region or Indian Ocean region in this particular aspect. We have the Sagar policy, which is trying to have a proper maritime policy of India when it comes to maintaining good contacts with the countries in the Indian Ocean region. We also have the neighborhood first policy, where India will be extending assistance on a priority basis to its neighbors, including Sri Lanka. Also, India spearheaded the Colombo Security Conclave, which is a very important security organization when it comes to this region. And finally, we have Mitra and Shakti military exercises, right? I'll be coming to it in the next few slides when we talk about the significance of, overall, India and Sri Lankan contacts. So these are, the main security aspects, because we have just discussed about China, be the Hambantota port, or be the presence of, merchant, Chinese merchant vessels or Chinese military vessels in this region. China is trying to become aggressive in this, particular Indian Ocean region, due to, the efforts of India and the rest of the West, which is collaborating in an effort against China to combat China's region. China is, on the other hand, trying to become more, assertive. So this is why we need Sri Lanka with us, correct? And herein, we have to also discuss about how India is engaging with Sri Lanka in various fields, how India is assisting, understanding the strategic significance, right? Firstly, India and Sri Lanka has this free trade agreement, which was initiated in 2000s. Also, when we talk about India's large market potential for Sri Lanka, which is huge. So Sri Lanka is always ambitious with its exports to India. Correct. Next, India's dynamic market. It is among the world's 5th largest economy. Can you let me know in the comments as to what is the precise rank of India is when we talk about, say, the largest economy of the entire world. So you let me know in the comments what is India's rank right now. Correct. So this data is quite outdated. You let me know what is the rank right now. Right. And also we have to understand that India is Sri Lanka's top trading partner, and they are the biggest trading partners within the SAARC countries, correct, with a potential to increase trade in services too, correct. And also when it came to the COVID-19, be it the supply of goods, be it the supply of essential commodities, India was always ahead. And when we talk about the cultural cooperation agreement, this was set up at Colombo in Sri Lanka in 1977, where various cultural contacts, mainly the Buddhist contacts, were established. Next, we have the various development assistance from India side, which total to around, say, $3 billion as of now, $400 million particularly for poverty alleviation schemes and policies in Sri Lanka, where we have of the Indian housing project, where India is trying to construct around, say, 10 to 15,000 affordable housing communities in Sri Lanka. We also have the high impact community development projects to build and rehabilitate slums and various say business and entrepreneurship say agencies. Then we also have the COVID assistance, which we talked about. We have the 2024 ferry service, which was started between Nagapattinam in India and Kankeshan-Thurai in Sri Lanka. So the various ferry services are very important because the people-to-people contacts needs to be established, due to which the ferries can travel to and fro between the two countries. Next, we also have the Indo-Sri Lankan Defense Dialogue, which was initiated in 2012, right, under which we have various amount of military collaborations, training, skill impartment, and rest of the other things in defense aspect, wherein we have the joint military exercises, Mitra Shakti, which we talked about, and also the naval military exercises, which is known as SLINUX. Highly important for the upcoming prelims examination. Next, we also have the Kankeshan-Thurai port, which India has actually contributed a lot in setting up. And finally, we also have the BIMSTEC and the Indian Ocean Ream Association and the various other international multilateral organizations with India and Sri Lanka are both part of. So that is what we have to understand, the various agencies and the various way in which India is trying to engage with Sri Lanka, and that is also in various fields. Despite that engagement, despite so many other things, we also have various issues and challenges. Firstly, the increased Chinese presence that we discussed, be it the Hambantota port, be it China's broader string of pearls policy, be it China's debt trap policy and wolf warrior diplomacy, and in the various other cases which the world criticizes and China reacts, that is a wolf warrior diplomacy, and the various other merchant navy vessels of China which is present in this region. China is trying to become very aggressive, and also China is trying to entangle India by going into various contracts with India's neighbors and trying to entangle or say encircle India. So this is one of the issues where China can actually give various loans, various assistance over a long period of time to these countries, particularly Sri Lanka, and snatch away India's partnerships with Sri Lanka. Next, high amount of political instability and corruption due to various regime changes, due to various, say, family-related political dynasties in Sri Lanka. We understand the economic scenario is not at all healthy. We also have this debt trap policy of China, right, which can jeopardize India's own, say, various steps. For example, all of the things that we have discussed. For example, development assistance and the military cooperation and the defense dialogues and so on. Port development, poverty alleviation. So China can come with very low interest rates, fictitious grants and so on to win over Sri Lanka. That is actually one of the challenges which India faced with the previous governments, right? The previous governments were actually, not too friendly with the Indian dispensation when it came to Chinese comparison, right? Then we also have always some of the other issues with regarding, with respect to the fishermen issues, right? Some of our own fishermen get, say, entangled in the various maritime borders between India and Sri Lanka, due to which they get arrested, and also that happens with Sri Lankan fishermen too. So this is one outstanding issue which is always in the news, which is always creating conflicts, mainly between the Tamil community and the Sri Lankan community. correct? Then also we have the Kachativu Island dispute, which is an island located in this part, right, which is actually disputed as to the sovereignty is concerned. Next, finally, we have the pandemic effect, due to which there was a shortfall in tourism revenue, due to which Sri Lankan nation faced a major BOP crisis, and this challenge was made much more easier for Sri Lanka to deal with, because India came with its own assistance, and also India brokered and also tried to say bring in IMF and bring in the various measures of IMF to fund and to alleviate various BOP issues. Now finally, when we talk about the recent visit, right, so what is the significance? We have to understand in greater detail. We have to understand in September 2024, right, the new Sri Lankan president came to power, and upon coming to power, he directly tried to acknowledge India's crucial role in Sri Lanka and Sri Lankan overall development, and also in the overall Indian Ocean region, which is very much appreciated. It is also, he has also given a statement that I have given an assurance to the Prime Minister of India that we will not have our land be used in a manner that is detrimental to the interest of India in any way. Maybe he is referring to the Hambantota port, and maybe the future investment that China is going to do there that can jeopardize India's interest. So that is a very important statement that is coming from the new president, right? And this is why Narendra Modi and his power and his hold over the international arena comes to prominence, correct? And that is also, according to the various other statements, he has also highlighted and also tried to give very, hidden references to Chinese activities, which is also an indicator maybe, Sri Lanka is also becoming obvious of China's broader intentions. Apart from this, we also have various energy ties that can be boosted. In a joint statement recently, it has been announced that grid electricity, also renewable electricity, because Sri Lanka has a very high scope for solar energy and mostly wind energy, and also when it comes to tidal energy, India is trying to cooperate in this region. Next, the petroleum pipeline also will be set up, along with the UAE can also be a partner in the near future. Next, the railway signaling system will be developed by India. Scholarships will be offered to various students, mainly women in the country of Sri Lanka. Training of over 1,500 plus Sri Lankan civil servants will be done or will be delivered by India. Next, we also have various ferry services which will be started at Talai Mannar region of Sri Lanka, which can again help facilitate better people-to-people contacts. Then the Ramayana and Buddhist circuits will be also conceptualized, where the tourism potential can be boosted. Now, there is a broader consensus that Sri Lanka can be better integrated with South India, and this is in Sri Lanka's best long-term interest. Why? Because of the geographical proximity. Now, these are the various points we can use in our way forward, and this is actually a statement which we can use in your conclusions whenever we are trying to give a way forward in the Indian-Sri Lankan ties. So it is best in both Indian and Sri Lankan interest that we can have a long-term cooperation if we integrate it with the Southern Asian region. Integration means the economic ties, the various amount of infrastructural ties, right? The various amount of finding the permanent solution to the issue of fishermen in the region, solving the issue of Kachativu Island, and also a very, very important thing, which is the 13th amendment to the Sri Lankan constitution, which guarantees rights for the minorities of Sri Lanka who are the Tamils, right? So if Sri Lankan government, the new government, can guarantee all these things, it will go a long way. Besides this, we can also adopt various other avenues by including much more emphasis and significance to Sri Lanka under India's Act East policy and Sagar policy, and have a broader strategic stability by boosting infrastructure, defense in the region, right? And this is actually becoming very important in the backdrop that we have with reference to China, correct? And based on our discussion, I I'm showing you one PYQ here from 2020 prelims, where we can understand how UPSC can frame questions from such articles. So here you can actually talk about, say, the Indian Sri Lankan trade, right, and also the trade between India and Bangladesh in textile, and also say the various major trading partners of India such as Nepal and various other, say, countries. So based on this, you let me know what is the answer of this in the comments below of this PYQ. Also, when we talk about mains, right, now here we find that we have a question here from 2022 and 2013, where we can actually try to understand here that India is an old age friend of Sri Lanka. Discuss India's role in the recent crisis in Sri Lanka in light of the preceding statement. So you let me know 2-3 of your points in the comment section. Also, in respect of India and Sri Lankan relations, discuss how domestic factors influence foreign policy. So we understand we just have discussed so many things here. You also let me know 2-3 of your own observations in the comment section below. Now we will be moving on to the next one. India has its net zero emission target by 2070. That means by 2070, whatever CO2 or say carbon dioxide equivalent other gases are, India will be emitting, right? The same equivalent amount of CO2 or various other CO2 equivalent emissions will be sequestered or will be, say, taken back by India, right? So this is actually a state of carbon, say, in net zero carbon emissions. And here, green hydrogen is offering India a crucial pathway to decarbonize its industrial sector. So there are various ways in which we can reduce carbon dioxide by adopting solar energy, by adopting various other advancements in, say, biofuels and so on. One more way is adopting green hydrogen. So here, for our prelims and for our GS3, we'll be understanding the various implications of green hydrogen. Firstly, how it is generated. It is generated using this simple cell, right? We know with reference to any cell, we have anode and cathode. We have in the, say, in the middle, we have a membrane for the, say, ions to pass through. What happens here is that, firstly, the water that is used in the electrolysis must be containing various salts and minerals to conduct the electricity, right? And here, what we will be doing, we will be supplying the electricity in this particular, say, cell via renewable energies. That means we can supply the electricity by using coal, right? Coal-based thermal power plants. But what we will be doing, we will be not using coal, because that is a component of gray hydrogen. Here we are talking about green hydrogen, where we will be using wind energy or solar energy, which are renewable sources. So we'll be getting the electricity from renewable sources, and using the electricity we'll be trying to separate the ions in the water, right, and the various salts and minerals. So what will be happening here will be, say for example, here in the step 2, the 2 electrodes are immersed in the water and connected to the power source, and that is a direct current power source, right? That power will be coming from here, right? The dissociation of hydrogen oxygen ions occur whenever the electrodes attract the ions with an opposite charge. So this is simple class 7 chemistry, right? So whenever we have the anode and cathode, and whenever we have the electricity supplied, the dissociation of ions will be taking place, and the opposite, say, charges will be attracting according to the various, say, anode and cathode. And here, during the electrolysis, an oxidation reduction reaction occurs, due to which we have, due to the electricity, this reaction occurs, and due to which we get hydrogen. And this is the hydrogen that we can use for various kinds of applications. With this we can use, say, for transportation, we can use for various industries to generate furthermore power, because hydrogen is a very useful fuel. And in this process we have zero CO2 emissions, because as from the reactions we can talk that the overall whatever we get as a waste product, that is water, correct? And also we understand that only water is a byproduct. And finally, the most important benefit is that energy security is a most important aspect of green hydrogen. Why? Because we easily can get water, we have atmospheric oxygen, and we can actually build up this infrastructure in which we can have self-sufficiency. We do not have to depend on the Gulf countries for our petroleum or for our crude oil, right? We do not have to depend on the rest of the countries, European and the Western nations, for uranium supplies for our nuclear power plants. If we have green hydrogen, we have the renewable sources, we have the proper amount of infrastructure, and we can generate unlimited amount of green hydrogen, which we can use in unlimited amount of applications and industry and transportation sector and various other sector. So when we talk about India's own green hydrogen ambition, the target for the Indian target is to produce 5 million metric tons of green hydrogen annually, right, every year by 2030. And here the main significance is that if India is trying to have this amount of target achieved, it will be positioning India as a global leader in green hydrogen. And let me tell you, if India is achieving this particular aspect, India can also export its green hydrogen to various other green hydrogen deficient nations, particularly first our neighboring nations, where we can actually cut down on the various power supplies based on thermal power plants, because that causes a lot of pollution in our country, in our local areas, and we can replace it with green hydrogen. For example, with Bangladesh, with Nepal, with Bhutan, with various other countries, even Myanmar. And also green hydrogen is such a fuel which we can actually use to transport it, right, using various transshipment corridors too. That means we can actually contain them within containers and we can export it to the various other nations. So we can also gain foreign exchange in this manner. That is why it is told that India will be becoming a global leader, because the revenues or the monies that will be accruing from this particular investment, that can also be reinvested in this particular aspect. Correct? And India as of now is having around 175 gigawatts of renewable energy generation power in the country. So using that, India can generate green energy, but we have to understand, correct, that India's own aspects when it come to say the current progress, according to an analysis by BNEF or Bloomberg NEF, right, it is indicating that India is only on track to meet only 10% of this target. What are the various issues? First, we have to talk about the economic challenges, and this is actually one of the most and maybe the only important challenge here, because the grey hydrogen that I talked of recently, right, that it is generated using say coal-based thermal power plants and various other polluting say fossil fuels, right? So this hydrogen which we are already generating is actually obtained at a much more lower cost as of now, right? But to produce green hydrogen, we find that the cost is around 5.3 to 6.7 kg per dollar per kg, correct? So we understand this is much more costly than the grey hydrogen. So don't you think that the private sector which will be much more happier to produce grey hydrogen instead of green hydrogen, correct? Because the cost is higher, and this is why this is creating a market deadlock. Do not forget to use these terms in your answers, right? Because these are the important technical terms when we talk about say this particular infrastructure of green hydrogen. Market deadlock refers to that particular thing, that we have an alternative green energy, better technology on one side, but that is costly. But we have a far more polluting and a cheaper traditional technology on the other side. So this is actually creating a dilemma. But when we talk about the market forces, will always be optimizing its profits. So that is why in India we find much more higher adoption of grey hydrogen in the country, correct? Next, we also have higher renewable energy cost, right, which is dominating hydrogen production. Mainly the cost is slated say categorized into two aspects: high borrowing cost for say setting up infra, procuring land, purchasing various equipments, and mainly the electrolyzer cost, which is very costly, right? It is also manufactured in rest of the world, which India has to import, and that is also causing a lot of financial burden on the private sector to follow up. So this is where we can sum up the challenges and roadblocks for India in this particular aspect. Firstly, the initial investments is very prohibitive. The initial investments mean to set up the plant, to set up the various stakeholders, to talk to the various banks to finance the projects, it is very prohibitive because it is very costly. The interest rates are very high, the electrolyzer costs are very high, raw material costs are too high. That is why the overall cost actually is much more higher by around $2-3 than the gray hydrogen. As we can also understand, the current is actually from, for example, hydrogen from natural gas, or even say, for example, gray hydrogen, it is far low as around at around $2, right? But the green hydrogen cost is much more higher. But going forward to 2025, NTPC, right, a PSU, is having a target of reducing the green hydrogen cost to $2, and Reliance Industries is having a target of $1 over a period of time by 2030. But these are the projected costs over a period of time it is trying to achieve. Next, there is also market uncertainty. This means that if at all the green energy is generated, where we will be using it? Do we have the suitable infrastructure to generate it, or do we have the suitable say export infrastructure to export it to the various countries? And also, what are the various technologies that can use green hydrogen right now? Because if we talk about cars right now, cars that use say hydrogen fuel cells are much more less seen in the market, right? Maybe they are still at conceptual stage as of now. It is not at all market prevalent. So if we invest, we need a certainty, right? That uncertainty is not there. Next, we also have competition. India faces competition from China, right? From Japan and the EU, which are also steadying up its investment because they also want to decarbonize the sector. So they are also heavily investing along with us. And if they are heavily investing, they have much more funds than India, and we have competition here. Next, finally, we have coordination issues with various state governments, particularly when we talk about land, and because land acquisition and say setting up a plants require huge political will, which is lacking in some areas of the country. So that is, these are actually some of the challenges. Now, what to do as of now? Because we have two-three major important policies to promote green hydrogen in the country. Firstly, we have the $2 billion incentive scheme to promote and set up infrastructure related to green hydrogen. That is $2 billion, right? That is a huge amount, correct? Next, the government of India also has a green hydrogen standard for India, where the Bureau of Energy Efficiency is implementing the various standards that will be set up for water treatment, electrolysis, gas purification, drying and compression of hydrogen. So we have the various standards, rules and regulations where it pertains to the proper and streamlined functioning of this sector. So that is there. And finally, we have a mega project that is known as the National Green Hydrogen Mission, where it is having an outlay of around 20,000 crores to be setting up prominent amount of green hydrogen say facilities all across the country, correct? That is a target of 5 million metric tons that we have discussed, that is under this mission itself. Addition of 125 gigawatts of renewable energy will be added. That will be in addition to the solar and the wind energy, right? Because green hydrogen in itself is a renewable energy. It will be creating 6 lakh jobs, reduction in the fossil fuel imports, which is very important because this will be saving of around 1 lakh crore, right? That is a huge amount. And finally, it will be leading to a reduction of 50 million metric tons of annual greenhouse gas emissions, correct? These are the various government schemes that we have. We looked at the various issues, what we should be doing far more, and these are the various way forward, very unique way forward you can use in your answers to get those additional marks, right? So according to the editorial, we have various ways to do that. Firstly, we have the long-term hydrogen purchase agreements. Now, these purchase agreements pertain to renewable purchase agreements, thermal power purchase agreements, where what happens is that the thermal power plant, they actually have long-term contracts with industries and various other sectors for purchasing of power from them. So with reference to green hydrogen also, we can have this particular aspect, because if you have a long-term contract, the private investors in green hydrogen, they will be secure that, okay, over a period of 2-3 years, 5 years, 10 years, someone will be buying green energy or green hydrogen from me. So we can have this. Then we can also have partial loan guarantees from the government directly, because private sector sometimes cannot have the overall say capital to give guarantees for the loans that they are taking to set up the green hydrogen infrastructure. So government can come to give up some amount of the loan there, some of the security there. So Ministry of Finance can step in to do the particular aspect here to give guarantees. Next, we also should be learning from global best practices. Firstly, from UK, which is having a low carbon hydrogen standard certification for various green hydrogen projects to have proper streamlined participation of market players. Then we have the US, Japan and Australia, where they have created strategic hydrogen hubs for better logistical management. For example, the hubs can be located very close to the coastal regions where we have ample amount of wind energy. We also have steady amount of, say, ports that can transport the green hydrogen using containers, so we can learn from them. Then we can also have various companies or startups that can be set up to lease up the equipments that are needed for the green hydrogen energy plants. So we can have these leasing aspects. If the private players are interested, they can take a lease. If they are suffering losses, they can just exit the business. It is actually making doing business much more easier. Rather than buying, we can have a leasing aspect. Then we have these cross-border partnerships, which we can adopt the model between Australia and Japan, where they have this hydrogen energy supply chain, cross-border supply chain. We can partner with Australia also. We can partner with the rest of the neighboring nations, Southeast Asian nations, to have the better amount of export of the same. We also can develop industrial hubs as catalysts. For example, Odisha, Maharashtra, Gujarat, as we can see in this map, and the rest of the states also, they're trying to invest heavily under this particular aspect, right? And also the union government has identified various states and the sites according to the same, right? And also we can target some key industries to begin with that will be implementing green hydrogen in these industries. We have steel and cement industries, fertilizers and refining, where we can start up and we can actually start to invest and implement and use the green energy in these particular sectors. Then we can gradually adopt the best practices, we can learn from mistakes, and we can actually improve over a period of time, right? Now, based on this discussion right now, 2010 PYQ and 2020 PYQ we have here. You let me know, carefully read the statements, you let me know what is the answer of the same in the comments below. I will be now moving on to the next one. In this next article, this is a very important one on religion and reservation, pertaining to our prelims Indian polity and governance and a GS2 Indian constitution. And here we have to discuss about the various features and mainly the basic structure of our constitution, where the main discussion of this overall article is on the reservation aspect, and if at all we can have reservation based on religion itself. And as we know that reservation in the country, also in the rest of the world, is a kind of an affirmative action, right? Now, in the comment section, you let me know what are the various articles that pertain to this affirmative action, because in this discussion, I will be pertaining to the articles which are pertaining to reservation and religion. Now, when we talk about affirmative action, it is actually about, say, promoting fairness in the country by correcting historical injustices, right? Now, the main idea of this affirmative action is to uplift the backward educationally and the very socially backward sections of the population to bring them to the level of the mainstream population. And this was generally by giving benefits with reference to reservation at schools, colleges, aided by government funding, and also when we talk about various other cases too that is there. Then we have the reservation of jobs for the various communities in the country, correct? Now, if at all this affirmative action will be applicable to minorities, this is the main moot discussion, because according to the Constitution of India 1949, draft article 296, the word minorities was dropped. Right? Initially, it was conceptualized that minority word will be there in this article. It was dropped. Now, this article right now is Article 335, which do not have this term of minority. Correct? Next, we have this Article 16, subclause 4, which is talking about the state to make any provision for reservation in favor of any backward class of citizens which is not adequately represented in the services under the state. So, we know about this article here. It is talking about, say, the government of India to make provisions to assure reservation to any backward class. Please note this particular term, right, which is not adequately represented in the services, that is the government services. Next, we have the Article 15, which is prohibiting the state from discriminating the citizens on the basis of religion and caste and various other terms also. You let me know what are these other terms, right? Now I have only selected this because this pertain to this article here. Religion and caste, right, cannot be a particular ground for discrimination by the state. And also when we talk about the first Constitutional Amendment Act, which actually inserted Article 15 subclause 4, it actually talked about special provision for the advancement of any socially and educationally backward classes of the citizens, or the SCs and the STs, correct? So from the wordings we understand that we have the reservation for the SC STs, for the backward class of the citizens, right? And here it is very interesting to know that Article 15 and Article 16 has the word only, right? Only is actually is interpreted as that that if a religious, racial or caste group is considered a weaker section or backward class, they are entitled to special provisions, correct? So here under the same aspect, that is why certain Muslim caste have been granted various reservations in various states. Also this was possible by establishing a sub quota within the OBC reservation, right? Now here this was actually the main background that we need to know to understand this article. Now here when we talk about the background of the news, the Justice Rajinder Sachar committee, which is a very important committee, it can be asked in prelims also, that looked into the various aspects of minority rights in the country. It was set up by the Manmohan Singh government back then to look into the very social, economic and educational status of the Muslims. This committee found that the status and representation of Muslim OBCs was abysmally low in the government services, in the government jobs, right? And that suggests that the benefits have not accrued to them, right? For the backward classes are still to reach them, right? And as of now, recently, due to which this article is in the news right now, is that recently Supreme Court orally observed that reservation cannot be on the basis of religion solely. This is a very important thing. Reservation cannot be on the basis of religion, because Supreme Court was actually hearing this challenge to the Calcutta High Court decision. Calcutta High Court recently, they did what? They struck down the reservation for 77 communities. 75 of them were Muslims, right? Within the quota for OBC, correct? And here, recently what happened? The court rejected an appeal also. This is a similar other case, right? The denial of a scheduled caste certificate to a woman from Puducherry after holding that she was born a Christian, right? And she could not be associated with any caste. So this is also sparking up the debate of some religious conversions, correct? Which is pertaining to this discussion here, correct? And here we have to understand that the Supreme Court clarified, while there is no bar on identifying a religious group as a beneficiary of reservation within the OBC, right, and SC quotas, efforts to include religious groups within the scope of reservation has been mostly in the OBC category, correct? So this is what we have to understand here. Based on this, we have Kerala, we have Karnataka, we have Tamil Nadu, which have sought to include Muslims under the OBC category, subcategorized quota of say OBC, correct? Because we have to understand, because there is nobody in identifying religious group as a beneficiary of reservation, right? In this particular aspect, correct? But we have to understand, in the Mandal case, that is the Indira Shawnee versus Union of India, correct? The Supreme Court clarified that the purpose of OBC quota was to address historical discrimination faced by certain group, right? And this is what we have to understand in greater detail. I am reading, you follow, that no class of citizens can be classified as backward solely by the aspect of religion, race, sex, caste, descent, place of birth, residence, or any one of them. Correct? So in essence, what the Supreme Court told, that while religion and other factors of the group identity were relevant, they cannot be the sole criteria Correct. So while we understand that there can be various aspects of backwardness, but religion cannot be the sole criteria. That is, if one community is, based on a particular religion, and that particular, they are backward. So the backwardness and the various other factors will also be considered, not only religion. Correct. So based on these only, as we discussed right now, Calcutta High Court struck down this reservation based on this Indira Shawnee judgment. But there were various other judicial interventions also, which actually planted the seed of judicial interpretations. Firstly, in the M.R. Balaji versus State of Mysore 1962 case, social backwardness should not rely solely on caste considerations. So social backward, if it is not solely based on caste considerations, so maybe we can include the various Muslim communities or various other religion minority communities who are facing discrimination. So this is actually opening up, liberalizing this reservation aspect, and it is time to open up this discrimination aspect to the minorities too. In the T. Muralidhar Rao versus State of Andhra Pradesh, right, 2004 case, we have the observation from Supreme Court that Muslim, Christian, Sikhs, etc. are not excluded from the benefits with reference to Article 14 or 16 and its sections. So this is a very significant case which is trying to open up the reservation aspects for them. And in the B. Acharya Reddy versus State of AP 2005, it struck down the 2005 AP government ordinance for extending benefits to the entire community, because here we have to understand, religion cannot be the sole criteria for reservation. There have to be backwardness that have to be proven, and there have to be various other aspects that have to be considered. So blanket government ordinance for giving straightaway benefits is not constitutional. Correct? There have to be other considerations as we discussed. Now what happens if there is a case of conversion, right? For example, a particular person has converted. Earlier that person was Hindu, right? And now that person has converted to, say, any other religion. So that will that earlier reservation will be continued right now or not? That is the discussion here. So under Article 4 341 surplus 1, the president can specify the castes, races or tribes which are actually will be deemed as scheduled castes. Shortly after the constitution came into being, the president came up with a list. The Constitution Scheduled Caste Order 1950, within it the list was of SC communities were released in each state. Clause 3 of this order right now is saying that no person who professes a religion different from the Hindu, Sikh or Buddhist religion shall be deemed to be a member of SC. So this tells that even if earlier a particular person was earlier from a different community, that particular person to be getting a benefit of SC category have to be Hindu, Sikh or Buddhist. Correct? And there have been many issues with reference to this particular aspect. Even in the Susai versus Union of India in 1985, right, the Supreme Court did not answer whether a religious convert would retain their caste status after conversion or not. But Supreme Court clarified that a person must prove that even after conversion, the handicaps or the discrimination and the various oppression is continuing. If that is proved by the person, then that person may get the SC status. But as of now, if you look at the various evolution of this particular debate, that is in 1996, P.V. Narasimha Rao government introduced a bill to include Christians as SC communities too. But this bill was never tabled. In 2007, the Justice R. Mishra committee was set up, and this committee recommended that once a person has been included in a scheduled caste list, a willful change of religion on his part should not affect the scheduled caste status. That means once a person has changed this particular is religion, correct, this scheduled caste status should not be affected, because the same discrimination, because the same aspects are continuing in the society, be it any religion, right? We also have various instances where the discrimination has been impacted across various religions, correct? So that is how we should be carrying this information in our mind for prelims examination, and mind that this is an ever evolving thing. So please do also keep following the analyst for further updates on this particular thing, right? So now we'll be moving on to the next one. In the next article, this is about say inequality in the country, which is pertaining to prelims and GS3 sections, where we talk about economic inequality in the country. Firstly, when we talk about inequality, economic inequality, it is the unequal distribution of income, wealth, or opportunity between the people or groups in the society, right? And when we talk about the wealth inequality in the country, it as we understand, the bottom 50%, right, the inequality, say the wealth is actually coming down over a period of time, right? And when we look at the top 1% or the top 10% marked by these graphs, it is increasing. So you can also try to implement these graphs in our answers to have these better points. You can actually give a rough indicator, rough diagram here to show the trend over a period of time. So this was the wealth inequality. Wealth inequality is actually talking about various assets that people hold. On the other side, income inequality is also a very serious thing. When we talk about the World Inequality Database 2022-23, 22.6% of national income went to the top 1%. So again, we understand the concentration of wealth in the hands of few is very much. When we talk about the monthly average consumption expenditure in the rural and the urban areas, we find that the urban areas are having much more higher consumption or say higher consumption requirement, due to which we find inequality much more say sharper in the urban regions too, because we need a better amount of income to live in the urban areas, right? And that is why we find the contrast between the haves and have-nots. When we talk about the gender pay gap, men earn around 82% of labor income, leaving women suffering the very ill fate of inequality. We also understand, according to Oxfam report, that the top 5% own more than 60% of the country's wealth. So that is a huge amount, right? Now, what is Thomas Piketty, who is a very renowned economist, talking about inequalities in the country, right? He is quoting particular say document here that between 2011 and 2023, right, the inequality has actually come down because the Gini coefficient has come down, and he is telling that inequality isn't a rich country concern, and India shouldn't wait to become richer before addressing what is definitely a serious issue. So we can actually copy these statements and use in our answers, right? Because inequality in richer countries is much more lesser, right? And this is actually according to a very important observation, that whenever the countries are at the poorer levels, the inequality is very high. Gradually, when they progress on, the inequalities increase, but after a particular income level, the inequalities come down. Can you name this particular graph here? Do we actually recollect a particular graph when we talk about this? But here, whenever we have to talk about inequality, and what Thomas Piketty is talking about rightly is that inequality in the country is obviously there with reference to wealth and income inequality, but mainly the serious type of inequality is the inequality of opportunity. That is the lack of access to good quality education, food, sanitation, right? That is leading to the deterioration of people's capabilities. And if people's capabilities come down, they cannot afford higher amount of productivity in their lives, and that is why India is stuck in a low productivity trap. And on the other hand, to fight inequality, Thomas Piketty is trying to recommend a wealth tax on the rich. But this tax is not a good idea by Thomas Piketty, because we have to understand that most of the wealthy people, all of the wealthy people generally, they hold shares, right? And they do not have a proper, say, a huge billion-dollar salary in a particular year. They hold, billions and billion dollars of shares which they hold, and whenever they sell, they have to pay tax. So taxing shares is not a very good idea, right? We can tax the income. Already we have much more higher income taxes, that is 30% income taxes on, say, particular income slabs, on high income slabs, above which we also have surcharges. So we have this particular thing, but taxing the, say, shares is not a good idea, right? And also we have to understand there are other sources also to have various other revenues, such as implementing tax revenues and so on. Otherwise, we also have various measures taken. For example, to implement good amount of livelihood policies, skilling imperatives, we have the Din Dayal Antyodaya Yojana, that is National Rural Livelihood Mission. We also have the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Yojana to give 100 days of unskilled work to the rural areas. We also have the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, affordable housing scheme. We have Skill India Mission to skill people on various IT skills, polytechnic skills, and various other industry skills. We have financial inclusion initiatives, for example, the Jan Dhan Yojana, right? We have the UPI promotion, and we have the various other incentives. We also have the Atal Pension Yojana and the various other insurance schemes. When it comes to women related aspects, we have the Beti Bachao Beti Padhao, we have the Swadhar Greh and One Stop Center scheme, which are all of the important aspects when it comes to reducing the inequality in the country. But apart from this, India must be implementing these schemes in letter and spirit both. In the next one, we'll be looking into how does La Niña affect India's climate, which is very important for prelims, Indian geography, and GS1 important geophysical phenomena. The entire story starts with the Pacific Ocean. We know that we have, the equator along this particular aspect. So due to the in normal conditions, due to the insolation of the sun, the Pacific waters are quite warm in normal situations, and above that we also have the trade winds which blow in this direction. So what happens? The warm waters are actually pushed on to the coast of Australia, that is the east coast of Australia. So the warm waters accumulate in this region under normal conditions, and to compensate, colder water comes up, that is known as the upwelling, that carries nutrient rich water to the coast of Peru, which is why it is also a very important fishing zone in normal conditions, right? So this is a normal condition, due to which here we have a low pressure region due to higher solar insolation, higher formation of clouds and precipitation. On the other side, we have a high pressure region over this area of Peru, correct? Due to which we have this particular flow of winds from high pressure to low pressure, and in this particular aspect here. Now what happens during La Nina is just a more intensified version of the normal situation. That under normal situation we have this particular effect here, but under La Nina, due to various atmospheric conditions, this these trade winds are much more intensified, and that leads to much more accumulation of warm waters in this region. And if we have warm waters in this region, and we have much more amount of low pressure in this region, so much more precipitation, much more heavy rainfall. So that is where we have better amount of rainfall in the Australia and the associated region around the same. And when we have low pressure area here, then we have various high pressure area near the Mascarenes, right? And if we have high pressure region in Mascarenes, then during the summer months and the pre-monsoon months, we already have a low pressure in the North Indian region due to summers. So this also suggests that if we have La Nina region, which is having much more low pressure region over Australia, this creates much more intensified high pressure region is Mascarenes, right, which is also known as Mascarenes highs, that will be leading to better amount of monsoon in Indian region, because low pressure region in India will be much more intensified, correct? So this actually during La Nina, India receives normal or above normal rainfall during monsoon seasons, right? And the same phenomena causes droughts in Africa and intensifies hurricanes over Atlantic Ocean, correct? And when it comes to El Nino, the entire scene is just opposite, correct? And after we have understand this, we can look now into India's climatic conditions due to this particular aspect. Now, we have to understand that La Nina is yet to develop, because around in the month of October, November, December, La Nina generally generates, but right now we are facing some delays, right? As of December, we only have a 57% chance of it, correct? And also we have to understand this decade began with 3 consecutive La Nina events, that is 2022, and also a rare occurrence that is known as triple dip La Nina, right? And this was followed by El Nino in 2023. And according to various experts, climate change is actually one of the most important factors here. Now, what are the important changes? Firstly, when we talk about various meteorological data, La Nina winters are actually much more colder compared to El Nino, right? And also daytime temperatures are higher, right? And also, we understand that the average wind speed is also higher according to these meteorological data that is spanning 35 years. And also, faster winds during this time, they help to, spread away the pollution to other regions. So it helps to reduce air pollution too. And also, if La Niña sets in, low temperatures in North India may lead people to burn more biomass, right? In winters, we burn a lot of biomass to keep ourselves warm, and that may increase, pollution. Instead, correct. And when we talk about La Nina and monsoon, the significance is very important, because El Nino summers are much more harsher, but La Nina summers are not much more harsh, right, as compared to El Nino. And it may offer relief from high heat too, correct. And also, La Nina promotes robust monsoon, as we have just discussed. The Mascarena's highs and the low pressure on the Indian subcontinent, which is translating in normal or above normal, say monsoon, as also was seen in recently in La Nina years of 2020, 21 and 22. So these are very important facts, very important observations that I wanted to extract from the newspaper for your information. In the next one, we'll be talking about the procedures for removing judges. And here, firstly, when we talk about Article 124, this is pertaining to removal of Supreme Court judges, and Article 214, removal of High Court judges. And they can be only removed on the grounds of proven misbehavior or incapacity. But here we have to understand the general procedure is followed is impeachment. Right? But the Constitution does not use the term impeachment for the removal of Supreme Court or High Court judges here. And they can be removed only by an order of the President, and the procedure for the same is Judges Inquiry Act of 1968. All of these are very familiar to all of you. I know prelims is upcoming soon. That is why I thought of revising you all of these important, say, terms here, right? And here, when we talk about this particular article, this is talking about a Blackstone's ratio, that it is actually talking about that in criminal jurisprudence, it is better that 10 guilty persons escape than one innocent person suffer, right? We understand this is the same case with our, say, removal of judges here, that even we understand that if one innocent person is suffering, we have to let go of the 10 guilty persons. And that is actually the same thing which is in the stringent judge removal process in the country, right? That is translating into this process. What is this? It's first started with the impeachment motion that is originating either of the house, that is Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha, correct? And here, for this 100 Lok Sabha members or 50 Rajya Sabha members should be signing a notice and should be submitting for this impeachment motion of any Supreme Court or High Court judge to the Speaker or the Chairman. And respective Speaker or Chairman can be consulting, examining or admitting or refusing to admit the case. If the Chairman or Speaker has admitted, the particular community of 3-member committee will be set up, where there will be a Supreme Court judge, CJI, Chief Justice of High Court, and the distinguished jurist will be present, where the community will be framing charges. First the charges will be framed, right? Then on the charges framed, investigation will be conducted, and the particular evidence and everything will be presented to the judge who is supposed to be impeached, right? For written defense, the person will be given opportunity for defense, and finally the report will be submitted to the Speaker, and then the Speaker will be laying the report to the Parliament, right? And here we have to understand that this motion is actually requiring the majority of the total membership of that house and the membership of at least 2/3 of the members of that house present and voting, which is a very strict condition, right? And we have to understand it has to be passed by both houses, correct? So that is why finally, if at all this is passed, then this is sent to the President, and finally the order is issued for removal of the same, right? So this is the entire process we have to keep in mind. Finally, we have the loan write-offs that is helping bank to lower its NPAs, which is important for our economic and social development topic, and GS3 Indian economic and issues and mobilization of resources. Now, what are non-performing assets? Firstly, when we talk about this is actually say some assets of banks. We understand banks have various assets, buildings, loans, say various other shares in various other companies and banks and so on. Right here, loans are also assets for the banks because they earn interest, and that is why they are an asset earning asset for the bank. And when we understand loan become bad or people cannot pay back the loan, that is when we have to understand the categorization of the loans or the bad assets of the bank. Firstly, loans are normal or standard assets if they are paid on time, interest and principal payments are paid on time. But if they are not paid on time, they become stressed assets, and they vary from 1 day to 90 days based on SMA 0, 1 and 2, where either the interest payment or the principal payments have not been made, right? And if that period is extending 90 days, they will be becoming non-performing assets, where they can become substandard, doubtful or loss based on the various time periods, right? So after around 1 year, the bank have to declare that asset as loss, and if that asset is loan is declared as loss, NPS is declared a loss, then the bank cannot show it on proper amount of assets, right? So there you have to understand here that the NPA ratio are of two types, GNPA and NNPA, that is gross net performing non-performing asset and net non-performing asset, right? Where we have the gross non-performing asset as total gross NPAs divided by total assets, and the net non-performing asset is actually the total gross NPAs minus provisions. Now what are these provisions? Provisions are actually sections of the profits or the excess amount of money, excess amount of loans that the banks have to keep aside to compensate for the losses that are accruing out of the NPAs, right? So this is exactly what is happening right now, that right now the banks are writing off loans. Banks are writing off loans. That means banks are not forgetting the loans of the borrowers, right? It does not mean that it is resulting in the waiver of liabilities of borrowers. Borrowers is still paying the loan and the banks can take proper actions against the borrowers. But what the banks are doing? Banks are actually writing off the loan. That means that the banks are not listing the loans as their assets in their balance sheet, right? They're reporting loans as losses. Now they have to recover the losses from the borrowers, right? And if more of the banks are right now reporting, writing of loans, that means they're reporting more of losses, and that is why if we understand NPAs right now are coming down. Actually, this was actually one of the recommendations of the Narasimhan committee, and this is why provisioning of loans becomes very important, right? Now we have to understand banks are to report these losses, to recover these losses. Banks can take their own actions, or they have to actually also talk about provisioning. Provisioning means keeping some money aside from these particular loans, and also the tax liability of the particular bank also will be coming down, because obviously if you report more losses and less profit, your taxes will also be coming down. So this is actually what the banks are doing. There's a massive write-off of around 9.9 lakh crore has happened, as you can see here. The NPS recently is coming down, correct? Also important, it is important to know the industry related NPAs. We have higher amount of NPAs in the agricultural sector, right, followed by industry, services and personal loans, correct? So these are all the important things that I want to discuss with you all today. Thank you all for being a very patient audience, and with this, please attempt the quiz that is following up. All the best till we meet again. Thank you.